Hello, I'm Dale from GA4 and today I'm going to show you how you can recreate the landing page report from Universal Analytics in Google Analytics 4. So when it comes to Universal Analytics, one of my most used reports was the landing pages report. This is the report that you could find in the behavior section underneath site content. As a content marketer, as an inbound marketer, this really did show me a lot of the information I was really keen to see. It shows how individual landing pages are performing, how much traffic they've acquired, how many sessions have started on those landing pages, and then what those sessions have gone on to do, how engaged they've been, have they bounced, how many pages per session have they recorded, what's been the average session duration. And crucially, it shows how well those pages have converted those users, whether it's in the form of a newsletter sign up, a free trial, or making a purchase. You can see the conversion information based on each landing page journey there. So really, this showed me a lot of the information I was really keen to see. So when I started using Google Analytics 4, Google's new analytics platform, I was a little shocked to see that this landing pages report isn't there as a standard report. There is a pages and screens report, which gives you some information on how pages are performing just generally, but this isn't the same as the landing page report. It doesn't show metrics related to sessions that started on those specific landing pages. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how you can recreate this old landing page report in Google Analytics 4. And in doing so, I hope you can see how easy it is to recreate any of these legacy reports in the new Google Analytics platform. So let's get going. So in order to create a report, we start in the Explore section. And these custom reports are called explorations in GA4. So there's lots of different explorations you can choose. You can choose from freeform, funnel exploration, path exploration. It's really worth looking at these and experimenting with them. But for now, to create our landing pages report, we just need to click on a blank report, a blank exploration. So when we open explorations, we're greeted with this page. And just to give you a quick rundown about what's happening on this page, we have three sections. We have variables, we have tab settings, and we have tabs over here. So in the variable section, the way to think about this is it's like a staging area where you put all the segments and dimensions and metrics you think you're going to need in order to create your visualizations. So an analogy I sometimes use is it's a bit like when you are going to create an oil painting. This is the equivalent of getting together your pencils, your brushes, your paints, just so you have them to hand before you use them to create your painting. In the second section, this tab section, when we bring in the variables, the various metrics and dimensions into here and set the parameters, this is what creates the visualization. The visualization is shown in the tab section on the right, where we currently have this blank canvas. Okay, so if you're going to recreate the landing pages report, or any report for that matter, what I suggest doing is just getting the old report you're looking to create side by side, just so you can see what it is you're trying to recreate in the new exploration. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a dimension to the variable section. Now the dimension we're interested in looking at is this one down the left-hand side here, landing page. And the landing page does exist in GA4, so I'm just going to include that there and import landing page into our dimension. So you can see there's no visualizations coming up yet because we've only got them in our variable section, so nothing's going to happen just yet. Then we're going to add our metrics. So the thing to be aware of in Google Analytics 4 is that many of the metrics you've become used to using in UA either have changed name or they've changed the way you calculate those metrics. So we're just going to run through and include the metrics from this report, but some of them will have close equivalents. So I'm just going to go into the metrics section here just to show you what I mean. So the first metric we're looking for is sessions. So I'm just going to search for sessions, and as you can see, it's there. So we just click on that. So I'm just going to also include entrances, because even though you would expect sessions and entrances to be exactly the same, GA4 actually calculates them in slightly different ways. So I'm just going to include this to see if there is a discrepancy between the two. I'm not going to include the percentage new sessions because that is not a metric that exists in GA4, but I am going to include new users, which does. There we go. So next we have bounce rate. Now I'm not going to include bounce rate because one, bounce rate has actually changed in the way it's calculated. Bounce rate is now just the inverse of engagement rate. So from my point of view, it just makes sense to have engagement rate instead of bounce rate because that shows how many sessions are engaged rather than how many sessions are not engaged. But also just to say that engagement rate is based on how many engaged sessions there were. An engaged session is a bit more sophisticated than the old definition of bounce rate, which just used to be, did they land on the page and then click away without seeing another page? Now there's more signals which they're looking out for. They're looking out for scroll depth, they're looking out for how many seconds did they stay on the page. So it gives a much better indication of whether somebody was engaged with the session. Because of course, if somebody bounced, it doesn't mean that they weren't engaged. They could have come to that page, looked at it for several minutes, clicked on lots of actions, but not seen a second page, and then moved away, and that would have counted as a bounce. Whereas now engaged sessions and engagement rate, it's just a much more sophisticated way of seeing if a session was engaged or not. Pages per session doesn't exist anymore, but we do have views per user, which is a close equivalent. It's worth looking at Google Support Center just for kind of further definitions of some of these metrics, just so you know exactly what it is you're measuring. Average session duration is another metric that doesn't exist in GA4, but we do have a close equivalent in the form of average engagement time per session. So I'm just going to click on that as well. So the next we have goal conversion rate, and the closest equivalent we have for that in GA4 is session conversion rate. Goal completions, which is conversions in GA4. If you've not configured your conversions in the same way you would have to configure goals in Universal Analytics, that's something you're going to need to configure in advance before this shows you anything, but we've already got those conversions set up. And finally, we're looking for goal value, which is now event value in GA4. That we've now selected a series of metrics which we're interested in, and we're just going to import those into our exploration. I should have said we're going to name our exploration so we can find it later. So they're calling this the landing page report. I'm going to set the date to the date I want to look at. So all that's left to do now is to take these variables and include them in tab settings. So there's two ways of doing that. You can drag it over, or you can just double click. And if you double click, it's going to populate the tab. And as we populate the tab with our metrics and our variables, as you can see, we're starting to build the visualization in the tab on the right-hand side. Now, if I just expand that out, so we can look at the whole thing, you can see that this is pretty much the landing page report. So as I mentioned, sessions and entrances, we would expect those to be the same, but they are calculated slightly differently. And as you can see here, there is a slight discrepancy between the two. And the reason for that is that, effectively, the technical answer is that sessions, a session metric starts recording as soon as Google Analytics 4 records an event, whereas entrances is purely tied to the somebody viewing a page or a screen. You can look this up on Google Support Center, but like I said, I'm only really including this as a bit of a sense check. I'm not really interested in a few metrics out of whack here and there, but it's just helpful to see. And you may choose to have either sessions or entrances depending on how you've kind of set up GA4, but it's not anything to kind of sweat too much about. As you can see, these broadly tally. So before you say, there we go, there's a landing page report, I just want to show you some of the benefits now that we have with GA4, which you wouldn't have had with Universal Analytics. And this is why I'm actually much preferring GA4 once I've got used to it, once I've worked out how to kind of set up these explorations. So the first thing is that event value is 0 for me. We don't have any revenue data linked to our conversions, and that's not something we've set up in GA4. And it's not something we've set up in Universal Analytics either. And for me, this is always just wasted space. Now we can just go to our tab settings and we can delete event value. So it's not taking that up. So we start to have a bit more flexibility about how we want to create this report. Similarly, I'm interested in how many sessions we had. I'm interested in conversions and conversion rate. These are the most important metrics for me. So actually, I want to be able to look by them side by side. So we can just move these around in tab settings, we can kind of drag and drop, and all of a sudden we've got our most important metrics at the front here. So now it's just a little bit easier for me in the way I want to look at this report. I'm not having to scroll side to side. So that gives me a bit more flexibility. Next, as you can also see that it's much easier to work out the differences between numbers. In the old Universal Analytics, sometimes it felt like we were looking at a series of numbers and it was hard to work out what was going on. Now we have this feature called cell type, where you can include a bar chart, which kind of shows you, as we can see here, this conversion rate is kind of way up compared to other pages. And we can also see that in the form of a heat map. So again, anything which is recording particularly high metrics, we can pick those out a little bit easier. And so we're not just looking at a black and white table. I'm going to stick with bar chart because that's my favorite there. Now, you might be saying, Dale, that's great, but I'm used to seeing a line chart alongside this. Now, this is one of the downsides to explorations. If you want to include different visualizations, you have to set them up as new tabs. So I'm going to set up a new freeform tab. Now, it's really easy. I'm going to add in, again, I'm going to add in sessions as a metric because that's the metric we would normally see. And instead of looking at this in the form of a table, I'm going to look at this in the form of a line chart. So we have that line chart which we're used to looking at. And I can expand out the date range so we can just see that a bit more clearly. So we can see we have our line chart, we have our table. Like I said, it's a bit annoying that they're not side by side. In general, this is what I've found with GA4. It's a really powerful analytics and analysis tool. It's brilliant for creating data visualization so I can investigate what's going on. It's brilliant for chopping and changing data. But when it comes to communicating that data, when it comes to putting that data in context and in a format that my team members can really understand what's going on and understand which are the most important metrics, it's not necessarily a data communication tool. So in conjunction with GA4, I would certainly recommend looking at a custom dashboard tool. So you can take that GA4 data and present it in a way that's really going to be meaningful to your team. So you can add goals, you can add status indicators, you can put metrics side by side so they know how stuff relates to each other. And a tool I would recommend for that is GeckoBoard. GeckoBoard works brilliantly with GA4. It's easy to build custom GA4 dashboards that let your team know exactly what's going on. It also integrates with 80 different data sources, so you can put your GA4 data side by side with your Shopify data, with your Google Sheets data, with data from Zendesk. GeckoBoard is also optimized for TV. It's really easy to send it to a TV screen, so you can put that information on the wall. GeckoBoard in conjunction with GA4 is absolutely winning combination. So if you want to check out GeckoBoard, head over to geckoboard.com, sign up for your free trial today, and if you've got any questions at all, please do leave those in comments and I will get back to you. Otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give us a like and subscribe. And there's nothing else for me to say, but have a great day. Take care.